Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to today's session. So, I am Dipinti, your host for today. As a lot of you may have seen me on e-GMAT. So, I am an incoming MBA candidate at Dartmouth Tuck, the Tuck School of Business. And today, in joining us in this MBA Analytical session with me as our guest is Ishita Sehgal, who has done her MBA from SMU, and she is with us today to share her experiences about everything about her business school admit, about staying in Singapore, about how many colleges did she apply to, how many admits did she receive. So we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about her background, how did it all start, and yeah, a lot of questions, a lot of things that were unique in her application, and we'll know her story. So welcome to the session, Ishita, and I hope that we have a great evening.
Hi, Dipinti. Thank you for having me here. It's indeed a pleasure. Looking forward to the sessions.
Amazing. Let me give you all a brief background about how the session is going to progress. So we will start with Ishita's background and experience as we usually do. But we have posted her profile in the comment section. So if you just want to have a quick look, you can. But Ishita will walk us through that in brief detail. And I think the major point that we will focus on while talking about her career is the motivation to do an MBA, because that is where everything starts. And so post that, we will move on to her business school selection process, because Ishita applied to 3 business schools, which were from very different regions. And we are going to ask her about the motivation behind doing that. We'll also ask her about the final, so what was the reason behind choosing Singapore and specifically SMU? What were the factors that she considered? We'll also talk about her application in SMU, of course. And, when we delve deep into her application, you'll see that there are a lot of things that she believed were her shortcomings in the application, and we all have them. But the most important thing that we will know today is how did she tackle them and how did she manage to turn them all into strengths and finally get an admit. And today, as we know, Ishita is employed with Gartner, and she's in India right now. She's now employed as a senior specialist in supply chain. So her MBA journey was fulfilling. It was great, and we are going to know a lot about it. You can start posting your comments and your questions in the comment box. We'll take them up once the session is done, towards the end of the session in the last 15 to 20 minutes. So yeah, having said that, let's get the ball rolling. And Ishita, so why don't you just briefly take us through your background? And I think most importantly, do let us know that, because you were a mechanical engineer for 4 years, right? So do let us know that, what was that motivation, or what was the point where you decided that you have to get an MBA, or you want to get an MBA?
Sure. So let me just briefly walk you through my background, and then I'll jump on to answering this question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. We can hear you really well.
Okay, perfect. So I am currently working with Gartner as a senior specialist in supply chain. Prior to this, I completed my MBA from Singapore Management University. And before that, I did my mechanical engineering and spent time with General Electric for 4+ years. During my time at Singapore Management University, I also interned with Johnson and Johnson, again in the supply chain division. Now, this is a very brief high-level summary. Of course, we can deep dive into specific aspects of my profile as we go along the session. But feel free to reach out later if you want to know anything more as well. Feel free to connect with me. So to answer your question, right, why did I decide to get into an MBA or B school? So there were 3 major reasons which actually propelled me. First, I wanted to gather business acumen. As a mechanical engineer, I was working on cost optimization projects, and that involved me, understanding how we can reduce costs and how we can affect the P&L, how we can work with stakeholders across different functions. So that is where I felt that there were a lot many things that I was not aware of, and gradually it takes a lot of time if you have to build up that knowledge. You have to work for a couple of years to get an understanding of those things. So that was the first reason. How we can work with stake. Yeah, so that was the first reason. Second, as I mentioned, I was working in cost optimization. I was very closely working with sourcing manufacturing professionals during this time. And that actually made me understand more about their functions, and I felt it was very interesting. And I wanted to more directly be involved in the supply chain so that I can impact the bottom line and the top line also eventually. So that interest in supply chain was the second driving factor. And so those were the two major factors. The third factor was that at the particular time when I decided to do an MBA, I had recently got promoted, and I had to typically before my next promotion, I had to do the similar kind of work for the next 3 to 4 years, and I felt that there were other gaps that I wanted to cover during that time. I majorly had a grasp of the technical domain by that time when I was 4 years into the company. And doing an MBA at that time made a lot of sense for me. So that's how I decided to go for an MBA.
I think that's amazing, Ishita. I think what you did was you kind of summarized all the reasons that anyone, any professional can have, because I think it majorly boils down to three reasons. So as you said, just to summarize them for our audience, the first one being that, say that you want to gather business acumen to get into your short term or long term goal. So whether that's entrepreneurship, whether that's moving into business or management consulting. Second, you said that, of course, you wanted to pivot into a specific field or a specific career. And that's also true for a lot of us, because we come from different backgrounds and we would like to pivot into some career, say general management role, or, for in your case, it was the supply chain that you wanted to create more impact in. And an MBA they definitely made more sense. And the third point that you mentioned, I think, was that if your growth stagnates, or if you see that, you're being stuck in this particular role, and that is where you're going to be at for the next 10, 20 years. And to reach your long-term goal, of course, it's going to take a lot of time. So, yeah, well said. And I think these are the three major reasons that everyone has. And of course, a lot of us do have like at least one or two of them, and then you had almost all of the three, but in say bits and pieces. So yeah, well said. Right. So let's move on to the next part. So Ishita, you primarily, when you approached your your MBA decision, and you took your GMAT and you scored 710, which is a very good score, and then you sort of decided to shortlist three business schools. You shortlisted three business schools, and you shortlisted the ISB, of course, from India, the IE Business School, and SMU. Now, these are three business schools from very different regions. So tell us, what factors affected your decision-making process?
Okay, so the factors that were important to me personally, I'm sure would be applicable to a lot many others listening to the session as well, right? First and foremost, the credibility of the B school, because that has a signaling effect, right? So that's one. I was very interested in having a good experience during the 1 year or 2 year, actually 1 year of my MBA. All three programs were 1 year. I wanted to return back to the industry quickly. So my academic experience in terms of the different internship options, the different uh, other projects that I could do, for example, consulting projects that I could do as a part of the program, the peer network, the diversity that I would get in the program, the country that I eventually go in. So all of these were major factors. Of course, I think to categorize them, because it might look all over the place right now, I think geographical proximity to India was one. That is why I did not consider USB schools. So it was either only India, so ISB, Singapore, which is very close to India, and then IE was the third option. I was not very keen on IE. The good thing about IE was that it has a very good FT ranking. So it's a very good B school. The alumni network that I would have been a part of, that would have been really good. With that being said, Spain, the geography where this is located, so that typically has a very high language barrier. The unemployment rate is also very high. So, knowing local Spanish language and then unemployment rate being high, these were the major deterrents. The third deterrent was, of course, the cost of this program, also the living cost there in Europe. In terms of cost, it was double the expense that I would have had to pay for both ISB as well as SMU, right? So ultimately, I decided to leave that option because of these three major reasons. Between ISB and SMU, that was a pretty tough one. So ISB is also a very good B school. The major reason why I took this, decision to get into SMU compared to ISB was because, in spite of, so this college actually is geographically close to India, but at the same time, it has good, it has good diversity in the class profile. So I had 23 nationalities, people from 23 nationalities who were studying with me. So that was a really great experience. International experience was one of the things that I lacked in my profile, as I was telling you earlier. So this program actually helped me bridge that as well. I moved across different countries, studied in Singapore for 1 year, learned about different cultures. Even the professors that we had were really great. I'm sure that is true for ISB as well. But these were some of the factors. Singapore as a city is also really nice. So Singapore, and then within Singapore, the college, the B school ranking, and the academic experience within the B school. So I think these were the major factors that made me more inclined towards SMU.
Right. So you had your obviously you had your reasons, and one of the major reasons that you mentioned was geographical proximity to India, right?
Yeah.
Now considering that, tell us more about Singapore. Like what were some of the factors that made you consider the country? So because when we look at a country, we definitely look at, as you mentioned, for IE Business School, the local language
Yeah.
barrier may have been a deterrent.
Yeah.
So what was it about Singapore specifically as a place, or as a country, that really attracted you?
Okay. So couple of things like. For example, the first one that comes to my mind is that the quality of life in Singapore is really good. Now that depends on a lot of factors. For example, the crime rate is really low in Singapore, so you would be comfortable moving around at night. You can walk around. In India, it's typically not possible, especially for women, except for if you are in Mumbai or some certain locations. It's pretty risky. But in Singapore, that's not the case. So it's very safe. The crime rate is really low. The infrastructure is really good because it's small and the infrastructure is good. You can travel from one part of the city to another within like half an hour. You can cross whole of Singapore, so that's really good. The climate is really good, similar to the climate of Bangalore, to compare. Language is not a barrier like we have in Spain, so that is also another great thing. And what else? Healthcare is really good. The education facilities are really good. The top three B schools, NUS, NTU, and SMU, they are in the top 50 global B schools. Additionally, we have INSEAD's Asia campus also located here. So pretty good in terms of very competitive students graduate every year, and there are job in terms of job opportunities as well. It's good, it's decent. Uh, I think it has a higher, of course, cannot compare, but then I think if you spend enough time diligently, you can get a job there. You just have to be meticulous about it. There are provisions, visa extensions can be there. And in terms of job prospects, I wouldn't say it's easy, but at the same time, it's not impossible. So,
Okay. That definitely summarizes the various reasons that not only you but even prospective applicants can consider Singapore as their, I would say that, yeah. So the choice, I would say, one of the choices where they would like to study or they would like to spend some time in. It's definitely a great destination of choice, as you rightly mentioned.
yeah.
Okay, let's so now that you have chosen your business schools and you have also zeroed in on the city and you had your right factors, the reasons to do so. So let's talk about let's talk about SMU itself. So you received an admit from SMU, and so why don't you tell us, like, tell us about your application process, like, how did you prepare for the application? How did you start preparing, first of all? Yeah, so let's start with that. So how did you start preparing for the application of all the B schools and specifically for SMU?
Okay, so the first common thread was I had to get a good GMAT score, and that was one of the first and foremost things. Initially, when I started, I used to get 670 in my mocks. With 670, I was not sure I would be able to crack these B schools. I might have been able to, because there were some students who did have that score, but then it would have been more challenging to, cover up this aspect. Through, like, I would have to write really good essays to be able to compensate for this thing. So I thought I should actually try to improve my score. So incidentally, I actually took GMAT, e-GMAT's coaching as well. So that really helped me in terms of the diagnostic. It actually pinpointed where exactly what concepts were something that I need to brush up. So that really helped, and eventually I was able to increase my score to 710. Now with 710, I applied and I was able to get an admit from SMU. That was the first thing, GMAT. But then other things were specific to the B schools. So coming to that, I think B schools really require a lot of things, right? So we have the GMAT scores to start with. They also look at your previous undergrad GPA, extracurriculars that you've done during that time, how your work ex has been, your awards, accomplishments, your references, recommendations, things like that. And you have to write really good essays. Now, essays are different. All these things might be common across the schools, but then essays are something that you have to do specifically for each B school. Um, so for essays, I actually took applicant lab. Applicant lab was a very initially, so it's led by Maria Wilch, who is an Harvard alum. It's in the form of a platform wherein you can select the B school, you can enter basic aspects about your profile, and that platform will tell you what are the aspects that are really strong in your profile and what might be perceived as weaknesses. So that understanding helped me in crafting my essays, because I understood that even though this might not actually be my weakness, but the B schools are actually perceiving that this might be my weakness. So I should, instead of over focusing on my strengths, because anyways they know that that is my strength. Because I am an engineer, for example, they would know that I'm analytical. But then if I try to keep proving that I'm analytical, I'm not helping my case, because they already know that. So instead, a better strategy would be to focus on what your perceived weaknesses are. So that was an important takeaway. And with that, I crafted my essays. And with that, I eventually got a call. I was very clear about why I wanted to do an MBA. I think that is something that helped me stand out. And eventually, I got interview call, and I cleared the interviews, and I got the admit.
Okay. Yeah, that's very well said. And you kind of walked us through the story of the application, including the fact that your GMAT score, and then you also told us about the essays and how you used applicant lab. So I know that it's an AI based application, and so yes, I have used that myself as well, but I used it only for the interviews. I took the add-on feature that they have for the interviews. But yeah, what I would say, says it's a very budget friendly thing.
Yeah.
So yes, but it definitely helps. And what I would say, that you do it through applicant lab, or you do it through self introspection, knowing your strengths, weaknesses, your profile, everything. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk touch upon the weakness parts of your profile, because I think you just barely mentioned that. So we are definitely going to ask you more about that. Okay, so yeah, let's move on to the next part, and I'm just drawing on from this discussion that we currently had. So when we talked, you told me that you did not have international exposure. Now, what that means is you did not you did not work, say offshore or on site, right, with the company. You did not have international exposure, and this could be possibly perceived as a lacuna in your application. Not like 100%, but yes, some, as you mentioned, some business schools may perceive that as a lacuna. So tell us, how did you tackle this particular aspect in your application?
Yeah.
So
So
first of all, let me also ask like one more question. Do you think it is important to have international exposure? And if so or if not, then how did you tackle it? Yeah.
So as a leader, you eventually, if you want to manage global teams, you should have this experience of working across different geographies. So that skill is necessary. Now, whether you have it before your MBA, after your MBA, during your MBA, that is of course a different discussion. But in terms of your career prospects, if your career aspiration is to rise to those levels, then having this skill is definitely necessary. Now, coming back to the original question that you asked, B schools don't. I mean, it really depends from B school to B school. For example, international exposure experience is really valued by INSEAD, but not as much valued by other schools, maybe. But the difference is that even if you have that, it will be a very good factor to add on to your profile. Like you'll be able to increase the value of your profile a lot if you can showcase that you have that experience. If you don't have that, it's okay. Many people don't have that, but then you can showcase something else. So it really depends on the school that you are applying to. In my case, yes, I did not have that. And the way I tackled it is by saying that the B school can actually help me achieve that because I'll be studying abroad. I'll be working with peers across so many geographies. Like in my case, I had 23 different countries, right? People from 23 different countries. So that was an important factor. Additionally, I also, there's an option of doing an exchange program. So I did it with IE Business School in Spain. And that was another dimension to the international exposure that the MBA helped me provide eventually. So I wrote these things in my application. There's also an option of doing an overseas immersion project, which is more like a consulting project. And I did it with a company in Hong Kong. So that was the third one. So within a span of 1 year, I visited like 4 or 5 countries, and majorly I spent my time in Singapore because I was studying there. But that 1 year was really helpful in building up the skill. So instead of saying that I have the skill, I actually said that the B school can help me provide the skill, and that is why I want to get into your program. So that's how I tackled the weakness in my profile.
That's really smart, and I would say that that's a very good way of handling this particular weakness. And just a quick takeaway for the audience also. I think a lot of us have different weaknesses, but let's talk about international exposure since we are discussing the same. A lot of us think that working abroad or working offshore, that's the only thing that provides international exposure. It does not. I'll tell you how I handle international exposure. How Ishita handled was absolutely very smart because she then said that the B school is gonna provide that particular experience. So what I did was I primarily I do I'm into a consulting project wherein I'm handling European clients and I'm working with Swedish teammates all the time. So I'm the only team member from India and I'm working with team that is completely in Sweden. So though I haven't visited, I haven't worked abroad, I haven't like stayed there and, kind of like mingled with the culture, I definitely know how their thinking works. That's because I'm day in and day out, I'm working with them. I understand their perspective. I understand, how things work there. So this is how I tackled, even I didn't have international exposure per se, but then this is how you can tackle it through projects, through maybe, an assignment that you have done with international clients. And yes, as Ishita said, or you can just say that, okay, it's something that I don't have and the business school is going to provide that. That's how you will bridge the gap. Right. So yeah, very, very well said, Ishita. Great way of tackling this particular weakness. Let's move forward. And so now that we have talked about your application, I think it's since you have already graduated, and we can definitely talk about your post MBA career and how is it going, your job and everything. So first of all, the thing is, you told us briefly that you were a mechanical engineer for 4 years, and currently you are working with Gartner as a senior supply chain specialist, right? So tell us about this transition, like, what factors were necessary for this transition and what were the skills that the MBA from SMU provided to help facilitate this particular transition?
Yeah, definitely. So first, as you mentioned, I was working with General Electric in the
Hmm.
aviation business.
Hmm.
I worked in advanced design tools. So I was working on value engineering projects, and I was responsible for working with cross-functional teams on achieving cost reduction targets through product cost optimization projects.
Okay.
During that time, I developed an understanding of how manufacturing and sourcing professionals worked and what were the intricacies, what were the, I got a sense of the kind of challenges they actually faced during implementation of the things that we used to propose as engineers. And I found that very interesting. So I wanted to learn more about those skills that they have,
Hmm.
the industry experience in that field, so that I could eventually work in similar roles, because I found the specific supply chain field very interesting. Now, to switch from mechanical engineering, core aviation sort of a job into
Hmm.
such a field, I did a couple of things. One was, of course, doing an MBA. Now, how that helped me was it helped me through the course curriculum. During the course curriculum, I took electives in the supply chain area. So, one of the very interesting electives was risk management in global supply chains. And as soon, currently we have COVID, right? So we see supply chains all over the world struggling, initially at least. So that was very relevant. So that MBA gave me job ready skills, and something that was very relevant. And I really appreciated that. So that's from the academic perspectives. You can take up courses there. The second one is you can take up internships. So in my case, I took up an internship with Johnson and Johnson in the supply chain strategy and analytics area. So that helped me not only leverage upon my past work experience as an engineer, but it also gave me exposure to the FMCG industry, which is very different from aviation, but the function remained sort of similar. I was in engineering function, but I was working with supply chain teams. So now I was more directly involved in supply chain projects, working in the strategy area across different sub functions within the supply chain, how to optimize those trade offs, how to do the decision making in the most optimized way. So that was Johnson and Johnson. And subsequently, I started writing articles about what is happening, COVID, how it is impacting supply chains, based on my understanding that I had gained from my course curriculum and my internships. And then that's about it. I used my learning even in my consulting projects during my MBA, and eventually I landed this job, which is very related, again, supply chain, but this is more on the research and consulting side.
Okay. Okay. And tell us one thing. I mean, so for you, it was. I wouldn't say that it was a like complete pivot.
Yeah.
So it was not like you were doing, say, something very niche and then you moved on to something that that only specific targeted career fields. But then you were doing something into supply chain, maybe not completely, and then you pivoted into going into a supply chain specialist, right?
Yeah.
So in your cohort or in your classroom or in SMU, do people have you seen your classmates take this pivot often? Like, have you seen people changing careers, and how easy or how comfortable was it for them as well, including people who tried to find job in Singapore itself?
Okay, so it is definitely very difficult if you want to do a complete pivot, because you are looking for a job in a foreign country. So there are restrictions. It's not very easy to get jobs. And like we have a culture of campus placements in India, it's not the same in Singapore or any other B school for that matter. Of course, the Ivy League might be different, but all the other top 50 B schools, mostly the culture is that you have to source your own job. There might be jobs that are coming on the college job portal, but essentially the task of building up your resume, understanding and prospecting about your strengths and weaknesses, doing all the networking, seeing what kind of career you want, what sort of roles you should target, all that background work you have to do yourself. So, keeping this in mind, it is very unrealistic to expect that you will be able to pivot completely to a different career, to a different function, maybe altogether. So, in my case, also, I did not see many people do it. For example, if I wanted to get into finance from engineering, or if I wanted to get into marketing. There were very less examples of people who have done that. Even people, so the smartest move would be to, because you are doing an MBA from Singapore. Now, if you want to get a job, the primary thing is that you want to get a job so that you can stay there for some more time, pay back the loan that you have got. If that is your motivation, then the smartest way is to actually stick to what you have done in the past, because you are already experienced in that. Maybe do a softer transition, not a very drastic change, and then you'll be able to have a higher chance of getting a job there, compared to a direct compared to a direct pivot. However, if you see ISB, now ISB is in India, so there the thing is very different. You can very easily make career switches there. In ISB, you have the concept of campus placements, and they don't really care about what your previous background is. Companies will come to your campus, and as long as you can clear the interview, you can clear the cutoffs and stuff, you will be able to very easily transition into a different career. But that is true only for ISB. I think even for other top B schools like NUS or IE Business School, that is not at all the case, because it's a different geography. The industry might be different. You can't change the industry, geography, and function at the same time. In the geography, anyways, you are planning to change, right? So at least one of them, function or industry, you have to keep constant to increase the chances of getting a job. So that's the smarter way to do it.
Okay, that definitely makes sense, and I can see that there was a comment about the similar thing that we were discussing, and the comment is on right. So is placement assistance provided, because it was very related to what we were talking. So I'm just gonna pop up the question here. So Abhishek asks that is placement assistance provided in SMU as it is provided in Indian colleges?
So not just SMU, for any other B school, even for NUS, NTU, and SMU, at least these three, even for other B schools abroad, you don't have campus placements. How the college actually provides you assistance is in a very different way. Now, they do offer assistance. What they will do is they will organize workshops for you so that you can understand your strengths and weaknesses. They will give you exposure to different kinds of jobs that are available in the market, because there would be finance club, marketing club, things like that. And then you would have speaker sessions, industry veterans who would come and talk about their field. So you would develop an understanding of what are the different options that you have, right? Thirdly, they would assign you a career coach. Now that career coach will sit with you, and they will look at your resume. They'll discuss with you what your aspirations are, how you can position your past work experience and align it to the kind of career you want to get into. They'll tell you if it's realistic or not, if you should change your target. They'll tell you maybe if some sort of roles require local skills generally. For example, if you want to get into consulting, and generally consulting companies do require local language skills, because they have to service clients in that particular geography. So if you have those sort of skills, then you have a higher chance of landing your target job. So that sort of support you can get from your career counselors. But other than that, they won't. Also, lastly, you would have a job board or a job portal within college, wherein you would have different companies posting their jobs specifically for your schools. You can approach them. They will also have some sessions, or these what campus these career fairs, wherein different companies will set up their stalls, and you can go and network with those companies. Immediately, hiring decisions and all might not be made, but it's a good way to network with companies. Similar sessions might be organized in your campus as well. But most of the effort has to be done by you. It's not as easy that these 3 days are demarcated for campus placements and all companies will come and ultimately everyone will be placed. So it's not at all like that. It's a lot of struggle. But the good part is that you essentially learn that skill, and that skill is very valuable, because ultimately in your career you will have to switch multiple jobs. So if you have the knack and understanding of how to do that, that will eventually help you in your long-term career.
Very well said. And I think, yes, as you mentioned, this skill is very, very important. And yes, not all schools abroad offer the campus placement thing. It's very, very, I would say that, so yeah, as you mentioned, the Ivy League business schools, they do offer It's not like, it's not campus placement like India that, tons of companies will come and all of that. But yes, I think there are few targeted companies that the school has a relationship with, and they do sort of, campus placement, or they do that. But yes, most of the business schools, they will not, and you will have to find your own way. But then that's a good thing. You're learning a new skill. You're learning networking. You're learning a lot of bunch of other stuff. Assistance is definitely provided, as Ishita rightly said, that they will provide the assistance, but they won't spoon feed you, and they won't they won't do the kind of campus placement culture that we have in India. That's very different.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move forward. And I think, one of my last questions towards you before we start taking up audience questions, because I can see that there are a lot of audience questions there. So Ishita, you decided to come back to India, right?
Yeah.
So tell us, what fueled that decision, first of all. And
Yeah.
secondly, had you decided to stay back in Singapore, what were the factors that would affect your job search? So, say for example, would you say that it was easier to get a job? It is easy to get a job in Singapore. Could you have landed a job in different geographies of your choice? Say, for example, US or Europe. And how do you think all of that plays?
Yeah. Definitely. Thanks, Rupinti, for this question. So, in fact, I was able to get a job after completing my MBA in Singapore. And so, getting the job was not as much of a challenge for me personally. But at the same time, the decision to move back to India was a personal one, because I graduated during COVID times and I wanted to be with my family. So that being said, I would like to highlight that one of the things that you mentioned about moving to different geographies like Europe and USA for Indians who have done their MBA from Singapore, that's very, very unlikely. Why? Because every country has their top two, three B schools that they regularly keep getting good, candidates for their companies. Like in India, if you see IIMs, XLRI, SPGen, these are great brands, right? So even for me, coming back to India and finding a job was challenging, even though it was not challenging for me to find a job in Singapore, because in Singapore, I was already coming from a very good B school, which is very renowned and prestigious in Singapore. But that brand value, that recall is not there back in India. So getting the first job is a challenge. For example, one of the job portal names is only iimjobs.com, right? So the name itself has IIM in it. And uh, even within the job description, they say we prefer candidates from good institutes such as ISB, IIM, and things like that. So that is why if you are doing an MBA from a from a B school abroad, of course, Ivy League aside, then it's very difficult and unrealistic to expect that it will be very easy to find a job back in India because of these initial hurdles that I talked about. Keeping this in context, for an Indian who has studied in Singapore, for us to get a job in US and Europe is even more unrealistic. So that I've not seen a single example of that happening. However, I've heard that people from Ivy League, they actually are able to move to countries of their choice. For example, US. For example, move back to Singapore or Europe if they so desire. So that is why Singapore is very competitive. In fact, if you want to get jobs, because you face not just competition from people who graduate from Singapore B schools, but you also have INSEAD, which is also one of the top B schools, and you have an Asia campus there, and you also have people from US Ivy League schools who are targeting good positions within Singapore. So that even the job market is very competitive. That being said, even the local good B schools, these SMU, NUS, and NTU, they also they are also very well recognized. So even for these graduates, I mean, within Singapore it's good, but outside Singapore, very unrealistic, I would say.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. All right, so before we move towards the end of the session, where I'm going to ask you for some tips, for the applicants, let's take up the questions, because I can see there are a lot of questions in the audience questionnaire. So Arush has a question that actually relates with what we were just discussing, and it's a little different. So yeah, how's the cost of living in Singapore compared to India?
Okay, so Singapore is very expensive if you compare it to India. I remember I was always multiplying by 50 every small thing when I initially moved there. But then that being said, I think the cost of everything would be 2 to 3 times of what we see in India. The rent is a very big, rent is something very heavy on the pocket. So here in India, if a single person has to stay, maybe about 15K, 10 to 15K, you can get a decent place. There, the minimum is 50K. So 50K per month, and that's a minimum. That being said, if you live very frugally, you can maybe 1 lakh per month, but not below that. That's the cost of living. In India, you can decently live in 20, 30K per person. I mean, but then yeah, it's 2, 3 times if you compare it to Singapore.
So I have a question here. I think I saw that question in the audience also, so I'm just going to put it forth. So tell us, how did you fund your MBA, and what did you use? Did you take loans,
Yeah.
etc., etc.?
Yeah, so my course fee was actually very comparable to ISB as well. So
Okay.
had I studied in ISB versus Singapore, the fee was typically the same. Right now it is 37 lakhs each, but I think in my time it was close to 30 or 33 something. Additionally, Singapore has a living expense of roughly 1 lakh per month. I was able to offset the living expense because I did an internship with Johnson and Johnson. So I in fact increased that internship from 3 months to 6 months, 2 months to 6 months, and with that I was able to offset the living expense even more. Rest of it I sponsored through a loan that I took from a bank, about 20 lakhs, and then rest of it through savings and stuff.
Okay.
But I would say that in terms of cost between ISB and this, it was pretty comparable. So there were other factors that were more important.
Okay. Okay. Fine. So yeah, that sort of answers my question. Let's move over to the next question, and that's by Yash. So why did you choose? You targeted Singapore, but why SMU over NUS or NTU?
That's a good question. So it's a very, again, a personal decision. The reason was that when I was applying to ISB, I was researching that B school, and that's when I got in touch. Not got in touch. I read research from one of the professors. I did more research to understand what that professor does, what are the different topics he covers, and which B school he actually teaches in. So, incidentally, he was coming from Singapore Management. Like, he used to be a regular faculty at Singapore Management University, and he was taking some guest lectures or things like that at ISB. So that's when I got to know about SMU. And when I got to know about SMU, I started researching more about the school, and that's when I got to know that all the faculty is really great. It's a very new and upcoming school that is rising very fast. The infrastructure of the school is very good. Everything is latest, cutting edge. In terms of internship, it was the shortest program out of these three, 1 year, and also it offered an inbuilt internship, which in my case I extended to 6 months. So that inbuilt internship was actually very good for me because it helped me get into, I mean, it covered the cost of living, as I said, and also increased my job prospects post MBA. So that inbuilt internship was very important. It was offering a lot of options for providing me international exposure through the consulting project and the international exchange program. So hence, because of so many factors, I decided to, talk to alums of this B school, talk to admissions committee, and I was encouraged by them to apply. I also talked to people who were in supply chain or, post their MBA from SMU who were in supply chain, and I asked how their experience has been, what are some of the things that the school helped them with. And with all that background, I felt that SMU was a perfect fit for me during that time. That's when I decided to apply to SMU, and I got the admit, and I was very happy. And that's why I did not apply to these other B schools. That being said, NUS and NTU are very good B schools. NUS, the advantage that NUS has over SMU, now I can say, is that as an alum, so one of the things that a B school provides you is the credibility and the access to alumni network, right? Because NUS is a much older school, so the alum base is very widespread. So that is the only advantage I would say, that this ISB school has. But otherwise, within Singapore, all three are pretty comparable.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. All right. So yeah, let's take up the next question. That how good is SMU for consulting, and what are the resources available for that? Yeah.
Um, okay, so I wouldn't say that it's very good or very bad for
Hmm.
consulting. We do have consulting clubs, but as I said, the ultimate aim of, like I would say ISB is very good for consulting because McKinsey,
Hmm.
BCG, and all of that, all of those companies visit.
Hmm.
Here, you have to source your own job. So, that being said, you do have consulting clubs,
Hmm.
but then those are also very new.
Hmm.
In my time, people were just trying to set it up, and it was not, I would say, very, very good. Over years, I have heard that over the last 1 or 2 years, that has picked up. So they do practice cases and stuff.
Hmm.
Even we had a session by McKinsey.
Okay.
But then I would say it's pretty nascent at this stage. I wouldn't say that if you are targeting consulting, that go for
Hmm.
SMU. Maybe explore other options within Singapore. ISB is definitely a good choice if you want to get into consulting. Very easier relatively to get into consulting via ISB if you want to stay in India. That is.
Thanks for the honest and great answer. I think that will provide a lot of insights for audience, because I know that a lot of people do target consulting
Yeah.
post MBA. Okay, so let's move on to a more interesting question. So there's a question by Pawan, that what is the character of SMU? So he means to ask that what's the ethos of the school? What is the culture like, and how's the cohort like?
Okay, so I would say SMU is a lot of fun. So
Hmm.
every time the campus that you visit, right? The campus is very vibrant. There are people who are singing and dancing throughout the campus. So whenever you go, your mood will get lifted by seeing all those happening things around you. So that's, I think, pretty interesting. And in terms of diversity, as I was mentioning, right? So there are people from all these different nationalities. I think in my time it was 23, but now it has increased even more. So you work with these peers, and it's a lot of fun. You go out, you have your not networking sessions that looks a little formal, but then you actually have fun interacting with all these people. So I think it's very fun place to be, very vibrant, very lively.
Okay. That's amazing. Okay, so let's also now take up this next question. So, how was your personal interview? Yeah, so let's hear about the interview of SMU. I'm sure a lot of people will be waiting to hear for that.
So in the interview, my interviewer was really grilling me to understand why I want to do an MBA, and
Okay.
a lot of questions. He wanted clarity on, you know, why I have made up this decision, how the school can help me achieve this, what sort of jobs am I targeting. He also mentioned that I'm a little younger for the cohort. So the average work ex is 5 to 7 years. So why do I think that I'll be able to, justify being in that cohort? What value can I add to the cohort and things like that?
Okay.
So it was a definitely grilling and challenging experience. But overall, yeah, I think it went well.
Okay. So I see a question here, that what is the difference between the personal interview style in SMU versus US. So from what I heard from Ishita, I can add my own experience to that. US business school interviews, they are very, I would say that they're very conversational. They're awesome, actually. I attended a few interviews from India, as well as a few interviews in the US business school. It's very conversational, and people really want to know you better. Of course, if they're not clear about some answer, and you're just say sort of beating around the bush, then they will definitely ask you a lot about that. But generally they don't throw, like curveballs at you, and it's pretty straightforward. It's why this school, why this particular targeted short term and long term goal. And yeah, so they ask you a lot about that, and the background, they evaluate the answers very critically. So the questions may seem very simple and straightforward, but the evaluation is very critical. Yeah. Okay, so let's move forward. I think Anjali has a similar question. So could you share, like how your experience at ISB was, your interview experience at ISB?
ISB was again in contrast. Okay, just to clarify, my SMU experience of interview was also conversational, like Dipinti mentioned for the USB schools. It was conversational, and the intent was more to get to know the person. But then I
Okay.
was just covering the kind of questions that they asked, like what
Okay.
value you
Okay.
can bring to the B school. But the
Hmm.
tone was very conversational, right?
Okay.
But they did expect answers to be in a very structured form so that they can follow along, and it doesn't seem like you are beating around the bush, like you rightly mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the pattern in SMU. In ISB, it was different. So it was a panel interview wherein there were three or four alums, and then they actually sort of grill you more in terms of they would want to ask you why you are doing that, and then another person might cross question you and things like that. So it's much more grilling, and I would say that's the difference. This was more conversational. That was more,
Yes.
yeah.
That's true. That's true. ISB is definitely it's a bit more grilling. Though I would say they're at a much better place than the other Indian business schools who tend to ask you some sort of GK questions that you may have never heard of, and yeah, that's completely it just throws you off. But yes, ISB is a bit more grilling than the foreign business schools. For me, they asked me a lot about my profile, about my application, like every single word I had written in the essay. If they found it a bit out of place, then they asked me about that. But ISB was still pretty much better than the other IIMs who
IIMs.
ask you GK questions. So right. So let's move over to the next question. And so Dina here has a question that, can you talk a bit about the areas that SMU focuses on? For example, which business sector would most people venture into?
So I would say three. One is technology, one is finance, and one is operations or supply chain. So these three are the major ones.
Okay, okay, yeah. So that definitely answers. Right. So let's take up, one or two more questions, and then we will wind up. Okay. So Anjali has a question that how is the culture for part-time jobs with college? Do you have that option in Singapore?
So the internship that I did with Johnson and Johnson, that was it was like a full-time job in the sense that I was working 9 to 5. And my classes were starting around 6 or 7 p.m. and they went on till the night. So that's how the course curriculum was structured so that you can work in your internship during the day and your classes are organized at night. And
Okay.
maybe you have to slog even later through the night to complete your assignments, or maybe work over weekends to complete your assignments. I'm not sure about the part-time jobs along with college. Maybe what you mean is something similar to what I'm talking about, but that's how colleges manage that typically.
I think what she means is, I think what we have heard is like people who go to do an MS or something similar, they do this part-time jobs which are not related to what they are studying, right?
Oh,
But I think an MBA wouldn't really, wouldn't really have the luxury of giving you that particular time. It's very,
yeah,
very rigorous,
yeah,
and yeah, most often people do not get the time to do a part-time job. So
yeah,
as she
definitely.
mentioned, the internship is one of the part-time jobs that people do. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is structured so that the classes happen during the night, and that's an initiative done by the college to ensure that you're able to do that part-time job
Mm.
during the daytime, so that classes can happen overnight. The
Yeah.
other option would have been to extend the course by 6 more months, so make it a
Mm.
1.5 year program, and then but instead of that, what they've done is they've shifted classes to the night so
Mm.
that you have to slog more, but you can return back to the industry faster. So if that's your aim, then maybe SMU makes a lot of sense. If you
Yeah.
find it too hectic and you won't be able to do it, then maybe there are some other schools that you should target.
Definitely. I really love the fact that they have weaved in this particular, the internship concept into the classes itself. And it's like you said, if you're a hustler and you're ready to put in those extra hours, then this kind of curriculum, this kind of heavy curriculum and internship together, it makes a lot of sense for you. All right. So I'll take up one more question and then, we'll close. And okay. So Tushar here asks that if we have poor acads, then are the doors completely closed for business schools? So yeah, just
Okay.
share your insights, and then I'll also add a few points of my own.
Okay, so B schools typically evaluate a candidate on their academic potential as well as leadership potential. Now they look at your academic potential to see whether you'll be able to go through the rigorous curriculum that we are talking about, whether you'll be able to understand the different things that they'll be teaching in that curriculum, and that is very important because like I was an engineer, but I was taught subjects such as finance and accounts right when I went into the program, which was something that I'd never studied before. And MBA is very fast paced, so you have to understand all those different concepts, not just understand the theory aspect of it, but also apply it in that short amount of time. Work on case studies and actually debate with your peers who are not just from your background, but they will have completely different perspective because they are maybe coming from sales or manufacturing or finance, functions which are completely different to you. So their perspective will be completely different and they'll challenge you. So unless you have a thorough understanding of those concepts, you won't be able to really talk to them and challenge them and understand, work on the cases, the projects that you've been assigned, right? Moving back to the original topic that we were talking about, that is why schools actually try to evaluate you on your academic potential. The way they evaluate you on your academic potential is by two things. One is your GMAT or GRE score, and the second one is through your previous academic scores, maybe in your undergrad. For many Indians, they have not gone to very prestigious schools like IITs or NITs, which are very known abroad. Anyways, that becomes a deterrent because then, suppose I was from Indira Gandhi Institute of Technology, which is a government college very well recognized in India, and companies like Google and Microsoft come to recruit at campus. But then, if I would have applied to a USB school, I'm very sure they would never have heard of this school. So that is anyways a deterrent. The second deterrent becomes that you have poor academics and you don't have good marks. But then you can always make up for it through your GMAT because if you're able to score very well on the GMAT, then you'll be able to show them that you can, actually do well in the academics. Another way to go about this is you can take up courses in accounts or take up other programs in management through Coursera or such online certifications which actually demonstrate that you have sort of overcome that. And now, when you apply in additional information section, you can say that I have gone through this and I've put in these many hours, and this is the score that I got. That's also an additional indicator. It might not help for all B schools, but it's a good hack to maybe try and do this. Definitely, please add further.
I think you've covered it all. No, I was actually going to say the same thing. I mean, if you don't have good ACADS, if you don't have good CGPA, I think in India we don't have the GPA scale that they follow abroad. If you don't have that, then try to get a good GMAT score. As Ishita mentioned, not all of us have gone to great business schools and great schools in our undergrad, and yeah, that's okay. I mean, that will definitely be seen as a deterrent, so do something to overcome it. Personally, I went to a college called Silicon Institute of Technology in Odisha. No one's heard of it. At least when I applied in the US, no one heard of it. But then my GMAT score was 760, and then I managed to show them other factors in my application. So that definitely works. So don't be afraid of one weakness. Try to showcase your strength through the other factors, like have good work experience, or stellar work experience, and stellar GMAT scores. These always work in your favor. And one or two weaknesses are fine. Everyone has them. Not everyone. Not any. And none of them will have a good profile that befits all the criteria. So yeah, thank you so much. I think we have reached an end to the session. So before we sign off, would you like to share any additional tips for our audience today?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So the first one is that I think one should always target if you want to settle in Singapore, then choose a school in Singapore. If you want to settle in India, choose a B school in India. Settle in US, choose a B school in US. What that helps is it helps you build a lot of connections. All the networking that you do, you focus it on the geographical area in which you want to eventually settle in. I see many people who want to eventually settle in India, but for the experience they take heavy loans. For example, go to Europe to study, then they're not able to get a job there because of the deterrents like the language barrier, and then they're not able to pay back the loans. They come back, they struggle, they don't get good jobs in India because the brand value of those B schools is not as high in India. So eventually it's a lot of struggle, right? You've taken a loan in India to pay for a foreign B school, but you're earning in Indian rupees, and it becomes tough to pay back. So unless you're very rich and you can afford it, then of course go for the experience. But most, like, logically, for most of the people, it would make sense to go to the B school in the geography that you are interested in settling in, at least for the next 2 to 3 years post your MBA. So that's the first one. The second is, be very clear on why you want to do an MBA, because MBA program is very hectic and it offers a lot of opportunities for anyone. Now, people from different backgrounds will come, like lawyers, engineers, doctors, and it has to offer opportunities for everyone. So the kind of opportunities will be thrown at you from all directions, and you wouldn't know which one is right for you unless you know what you want to do. So all that introspection that they want you to do before the in the application process is actually useful. It will help you during the program. It's not something to just hack the system and eventually get into the preschool, because it really becomes important that you have a clarity on your short-term and long-term goals, so that you can utilize the 1 year of your journey at that school effectively.
Awesome. Yeah, so thank you so much. So Vidisha has a question. I'll just take that up very, very quickly, because I can see that she has addressed to me personally that, hi Deepanti, would be great if you could get my question answered. So the question is, she has lower years of work experience, about 3 years. And so how do you tackle that? So I think Ishita can, tell briefly, but then my point is, the number of years actually do not matter. You can have 7 years and you still may not have done anything in your professional life. The quality of experience definitely matters. Say that in 3 years, people have started companies, they have, say, managed a lot of stakeholders. They have collaborated internally, externally, and done a lot of different kinds of domain work. So the quality of experience matters more than the number of years of experience is what I think at first. And the second is, you can definitely, so that is how you portray it. I mean, instead of focusing on the number, why don't you focus on the things that you have done during all of those 3 years, and how does it make you stand out? So yeah, this would be my take. But yeah, Ishita, just, you can just tell us briefly what you did for that, because I think you said someone told you that you were a bit younger in the class.
Yeah, yeah. No, I handled it in the exact same way. So during the 4 years, so the average work ex was 5 to 7 years, and I think I was 3 plus years by the time I was giving that interview. But then the way I handled it was, I showed them the kind of projects that I had done, the kind of people that I had managed, the teams that I had led, and then the awards that I had received, the patents that I had filed, and that eventually all of that helped them understand the kind of leadership potential I had and what potential I had after graduating from that preschool. So that really helped. So it's the quality and not the quantity, as you rightly mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thank you so much, Ishita, for this wonderful session. I think people got a lot of insights. And yeah, so if you have any questions, then you can reach out to Ishita. You can reach out to me, and you can always, we will keep doing such sessions on e-GMAT, because everyone has a unique story to share. And I think we can learn a lot from different people's experiences. So yeah, thank you, Ishita. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for
And
having me.
yeah, have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
great day. Bye bye.